Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're hearing the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any section using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Limitations of structuralism in discourse analysis. Critiques. Structuralism has profoundly influenced the field of discourse analysis by emphasizing the deep structures that underpin language and culture. However, this theoretical framework faces significant criticisms, primarily its tendency to prioritize structure over individual agency, which has implications for understanding human behavior and cultural practices. Critics argue that structuralism's focus often diminishes the role of human creativity and the ability to effect change, portraying individuals as mere products of these underlying structures rather than as active participants. Moreover, structuralism has been critiqued for its inadequate consideration of the socio-political contexts in which language is used, which can obscure how discourse shapes and is shaped by power dynamics and social inequalities. These limitations have spurred developments in discourse analysis, including approaches that emphasize agency, contextual sensitivity, and the critical examination of power and ideology, providing a more comprehensive understanding of how discourse functions within society. This introduction sets the stage for a deeper exploration of these critiques and the subsequent theoretical advancements that aim to address the shortcomings of structuralism in discourse analysis. 1. Criticism of overemphasis on structure over agency. Structuralism, while foundational in shaping the field of discourse analysis and offering profound insights into the structures underlying language and culture, has not been without its critiques and limitations. One of the most significant criticisms centers around its overemphasis on structure over agency, a critique that has sparked ongoing debates within the social sciences and humanities. Structuralism's focus on the deep structures that govern human language and cultural practices often leads to an underappreciation of the role of individual agency, the capacity of individuals to act independently and make free choices. Critics argue that by privileging structure so heavily, structuralism implicitly suggests that human behavior and thought are determined by these underlying structures, thereby minimizing the importance of human creativity, intentionality, and the capacity to instigate change. 1. Linguistic structures over speakers' intentions. One of the key critiques in this area is that structuralism's emphasis on language as a system of differences, as proposed by Ferdinand de Saussure, and its preoccupation with identifying universal patterns of language use can overshadow the intentions, meanings, and contexts that speakers bring to their use of language. This critique suggests that structuralism, by focusing so heavily on the rules and conventions of language, overlooks the ways in which individuals manipulate and innovate within and against these structures to express unique meanings and achieve specific communicative goals. 2. Social contexts and the role of power. Additionally, the structuralist framework has been criticized for its insufficient attention to the social contexts in which discourse is produced and interpreted. Critics argue that structuralism's analytical focus on the internal mechanics of language systems neglects the ways in which language use is embedded within specific historical, cultural, and social contexts that significantly influence meaning and interpretation. This critique is closely related to concerns about structuralism's treatment of power dynamics within discourse. By prioritizing linguistic structures, structuralism is said to overlook how discourses are shaped by and reproduce social inequalities and power relations. This limitation has been particularly highlighted by post-structuralist thinkers and critical discourse analysts who emphasize the role of discourse in constructing social realities and maintaining or challenging power structures. 3. Moving beyond structuralism. Addressing critiques and limitations. The critiques of structuralism have led to the development of new theoretical and methodological approaches that seek to address its limitations. Agency and innovation. Newer approaches within discourse analysis strive to balance the focus on structure with an appreciation for individual agency, recognizing the creative and innovative uses of language by speakers and the ways in which they negotiate and resist linguistic and cultural structures. Incorporating social contexts. There has been a move towards more contextually sensitive analyses that consider the socio-political, historical, and cultural contexts of discourse production and interpretation. This includes examining the role of discourse in shaping identities, ideologies, and power relations within specific contexts. Critical and reflexive approaches. Post-structuralism, critical discourse analysis, and other critical approaches have contributed to a more nuanced understanding of the role of power and ideology in discourse. These approaches advocate for a reflexive analysis that recognizes the discursive construction of social realities and challenges the power dynamics embedded within discourses. In conclusion, while structuralism has provided valuable insights into the structures underlying language and discourse, its critiques and limitations have spurred theoretical and methodological developments that emphasize agency, context, and power. These developments have enriched discourse analysis, making it a more dynamic, contextually grounded, and critically engaged field. 2. Challenges in addressing power and ideology. Structuralism, with its focus on uncovering the underlying structures of language and culture, has significantly shaped the landscape of discourse analysis. However, one of the notable criticisms of structuralism is its limitations in addressing the complexities of power dynamics and ideological influences within discourses. This critique centers on structuralism's conceptual framework and its implications for understanding how discourses perpetuate, challenge, or transform power relations and ideologies in society. 1. Examination of structuralism's limitations. A. Limited scope in analyzing power structures. Inherent structural focus. Structuralism's primary emphasis on the deep structures that underpin language and cultural practices tends to abstract these elements from the socio-political contexts in which they operate. Consequently, this focus can obscure the ways in which power is enacted, negotiated, and resisted through discourse. By concentrating on the formal properties of language systems, structuralism often overlooks the practical use of language as a tool for power and control. De-emphasizing agency and resistance. The structuralist model implies a determinism where individuals are seen as products of underlying structures rather than as agents capable of influencing or altering those structures. This perspective has been critiqued for downplaying the capacity of individuals and groups to use discourse creatively and resistively, thereby challenging existing power structures and ideologies. B. Challenges in unpacking ideological constructs. Universalizing structures over contextual variability. The search for universal structures within language and culture may lead to a neglect of the specific historical and cultural contexts that shape and are shaped by ideological constructs. Structuralism's tendency to abstract and universalize can result in an analysis that fails to account for the variability and contingency of ideological expressions across different societies and periods. Binary oppositions and fixed meanings. While structuralism's analysis of binary oppositions has been instrumental in understanding the organization of meaning, critics argue that it also tends to reify these oppositions, presenting them as natural and immutable. This approach can inadvertently solidify the very ideological constructs, such as gender binaries, that are socially constructed and thus open to contestation and change. 2. Moving beyond structuralism. Addressing power and ideology. The critiques of structuralism's approach to power and ideology have catalyzed the development of new theoretical orientations within discourse analysis that seek to address these limitations. Post-structuralism and the deconstruction of power. Post-structuralist approaches, particularly those influenced by thinkers like Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida, offer tools for deconstructing the ways in which power operates through discourse. By emphasizing the contingent and constructed nature of discourses, post-structuralism provides a means to analyze how discourses produce and are produced by power relations, opening up spaces for resistance and change. Critical discourse analysis, CDA. CDA explicitly focuses on the role of discourse in the production, maintenance, and challenge of power and ideology. It combines detailed textual analysis with a critical examination of the socio-political contexts of discourse production and reception, aiming to reveal the ideological underpinnings of discursive practices and their implications for power dynamics. Interdisciplinary approaches. Insights from sociology, political theory, and cultural studies have enriched discourse analysis by introducing diverse perspectives on power and ideology. These interdisciplinary approaches emphasize the importance of situating discursive practices within broader social, economic, and political contexts, thereby providing a more nuanced understanding of how discourses function as sites of power negotiation and ideological struggle. In conclusion, while structuralism has laid important groundwork for the study of language and culture, its limitations in fully addressing power dynamics and ideological influences have led to the emergence of new approaches within discourse analysis. These approaches, by foregrounding the complexities of power and ideology, offer more nuanced and context-sensitive tools for understanding the role of discourse in shaping and reflecting the social world. Conclusion. Structuralism was a revolutionary force, transforming our understanding of language, culture, and the ways meaning is constructed. Its emphasis on the underlying systems that shape human thought and expression continues to have a profound influence on discourse analysis. However, its potential for oversimplification has been a consistent area of critique. Structuralism's deterministic perspective can obscure the dynamic interplay between individual agency and the social structures that influence language and behavior. The limitations of structuralism become further apparent when examining issues of power and ideology. By focusing on the abstract structures within language, structuralism can neglect the ways in which discourse both reflects and shapes existing power dynamics. Its emphasis on universal structures and binary oppositions risks obscuring the potential for social change by presenting power relations as fixed and immutable. Despite these critiques, structuralism's foundational contributions cannot be ignored. The field of discourse analysis has, in many ways, been a response to the limitations of structuralism. Post-structuralism, critical discourse analysis, and other theoretical approaches directly address the need for greater attention to agency, context, and power. These diverse perspectives offer more nuanced and dynamic ways to analyze how discourse operates within complex social, cultural, and historical contexts. The evolution of discourse analysis underscores the value of both structural foundations and ongoing critical reflection. It demonstrates that theoretical paradigms are not static entities, but rather continuously refined and expanded in response to the complex realities they seek to explain. By acknowledging the strengths and weaknesses of structuralism, we can better appreciate its lasting impact and the vital insights stemming from the critiques it continues to inspire. Frequently asked questions. What is the main criticism of structuralism in discourse analysis? The main criticism of structuralism centers on its overemphasis on structural determinants over individual agency. Critics argue that structuralism tends to overlook the creative and intentional aspects of language used by individuals, thereby undervaluing the capacity for human creativity and change. How does structuralism's focus on language systems impact the analysis of individual intentions? Structuralism's focus on language as a system of differences, as proposed by Ferdinand de Saussure, often leads to the overshadowing of individual speakers' intentions and the contextual meanings they intend to convey. This focus is criticized for neglecting the ways individuals use language innovatively to express unique meanings. In what way does structuralism allegedly neglect social contexts and power dynamics? Critics of structuralism argue that its analytical framework pays insufficient attention to the socio-political, historical, and cultural contexts in which discourse is produced and interpreted. This neglect can result in an underestimation of how discourses are influenced by and reproduce social inequalities and power relations. What are the limitations of structuralism in addressing ideological influences within discourses? Structuralism is critiqued for its limited scope in analyzing how discourses perpetuate, challenge, or transform power relations and ideologies. Its focus on universal linguistic structures is said to overlook the specific contexts that shape ideological constructs, leading to a potential reification of binary oppositions and fixed meanings. How have newer approaches in discourse analysis sought to address the critiques of structuralism? Newer approaches, such as post-structuralism and critical discourse analysis (CDA), strive to balance the emphasis on structure with a greater appreciation for individual agency and the socio-political contexts of discourse. These approaches aim to provide a more nuanced understanding of power dynamics, ideological influences, and the role of discourse in shaping social realities. How does post-structuralism differ from structuralism in its approach to power and ideology? Post-structuralism, influenced by thinkers like Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida, challenges structuralism's fixed structures and binary oppositions by emphasizing the contingent and constructed nature of discourses. This approach offers tools for deconstructing power operations through discourse, highlighting spaces for resistance and change. What role does critical discourse analysis (CDA) play in addressing the critiques of structuralism? CDA explicitly focuses on the interplay between discourse, power, and ideology. It combines detailed textual analysis with an examination of socio-political contexts, aiming to uncover the ideological underpinnings of discourses and their implications for power dynamics, thus addressing some of structuralism's key limitations. How have interdisciplinary approaches contributed to overcoming structuralism's limitations? Interdisciplinary approaches have enriched discourse analysis by introducing diverse perspectives on power and ideology from fields such as sociology, political theory, and cultural studies. These approaches emphasize the importance of situating discursive practices within broader contexts, offering a more nuanced understanding of discourses as sites of ideological struggle and power negotiation.